Okay, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all things leader related. Thank you for tuning in today, as well as in past episodes. As you know, we've had tons of great content, tons of great guests, and today is certainly no exception. I am super excited to have our guest on today. I've known Peter Velardi now for, I think, 25 years at least. He has been not only a tremendous motivational resource for me in terms of someone to emulate, but he's also been my personal coach over the last, I think it's been 6 or 7 years now, right, Peter?
You know, it has. It really has. Time flies when you're having fun, John.
Time has flown. So Peter has had an incredibly successful career in financial services, starting, I'll let him tell the story, all the way from an advisor to senior executive, and now has been a very successful CEO and entrepreneur of a very successful company, which I'll let him tell you about as well. But Peter, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, great to be here for a whole host of reasons, but especially doing with you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. You know, I want to start off. It's funny. I was thinking about our background, and one of my our favorite memories when I came into the business, I think I shared this with you. This was back in 1994, so going back a ways. And I remember as a brand new advisor seeing a videotape, and this is how I first got exposed to you. I saw the orientation module 12B, which I still remember, which was you demonstrating the approach to go through a solution presentation with a client. And I just saw that and I'm like, wow, this guy is just unbelievable. And I must have watched it like 30, 40 times. I think I memorized it verbatim. And that was my solution presentation. So thank you.
Hey, happy to do it. They infamously called that the 8 paperclip close because there was a need in the company to build a closing system. And I had this little cute kind of simple one that people could replicate where you put clips in the financial plan and in the proposal. So you limit what you put your time into. And that was a lot of fun to do.
I remember that paperclip close. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
well, you did a lot of videos, and yeah, I learned a lot from you. That was just the beginning of it. So
Yeah, well, thank you.
yeah, so so much I want to talk about with you, and I know so much that everybody's going to get from you. Why don't we start off? Why don't you just share a little bit about your story, how you got into business, and let's start from there, and then we'll, I'm sure, get into some stories and all that kind of stuff. But tell us about your
Yeah,
background.
happy to. I think that's a great place to start. So graduated from Boston University, and my vision back then always was to become a management consultant at McKinsey. And I had a very clear view about what I wanted to do, why I wanted to do it. And I just love the concept of playing third party, looking outside in to impact something, impact an organization, impact a C-suite team. So I went to BU, got my business degree, and ended up doing exactly the opposite because mostly somebody offered me a job out of college selling insurance for John Hancock. And my philosophy was that if you can do that, you can do almost anything. And it seemed like a pretty cool little company up in Chestnut Hill, Mass, that was growing. The guy was a great salesman. He said, look, this is a better business. You control your own destiny. You help a lot of people. Give it a try. And I said, well, listen, it's all upside. We ate what we killed, and I like that. So I began right out of business school selling insurance, kind of much to the chagrin of my dad at the time, who was saying, geez, you should be getting a 60,000, 80,000 salary, and I was getting paid 18,000, and my expenses were 22,000. And he said, you sure this is the right thing? But of course he had faith. And it was an interesting move, John, because at that point, the industry was beginning to kind of explode. And I loved the solution. I loved helping people. I loved working with people one-on-one, but I began to fall in love more with the financial advisory piece of the business that back then, this is back in 82, 83, was just at its infancy. So I said, you know what? This actually is a great career. You control your own destiny. You help a lot of people. You can make a lot of money. You learn, you grow, you face adversity. That could be good. So I was looking for companies doing that. And I found a little sleeper company, a Midwest company that you're very familiar with, called IDS, that had just been bought by American Express. And I said, that's pretty cool. It looks like they're going to invest some dough into the company and scale it. And they do real financial planning. And so I came on as an advisor back in August of '84 at what used to be IDS American Express, and soon morphed into and spun off, as we all know, into Ameriprise. So fast forward the clock, I really enjoyed being a financial advisor. I focused on the Italian restaurant market in the North End. And I'm Italian, and I knew the food, I knew the lifestyle, I knew the language. It was an interesting client base. I had a few people come into my office with very large guns and put them on the table and say, you know, you do good by me and you don't ever see this. And it's like, all right, we'll
Wow,
do the right thing. And
that's intimidating.
it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about building a business, about working with small business owners. I learned a lot about the mindset of a business owner.
Hmm.
Love being an advisor, but frankly, what I got turned on by was leadership. And there's a number of things that sparked it. But first and foremost, I kept saying to myself, I can impact my 300 clients, or I can impact 300 people times 10 people in my district, or I can impact 300 people times 50 in a division, or 1,000 or 2,000 in a region. I began doing the math, and I said, you know what? If I'm here to make a difference and matter, I can really do way more of that through a leadership career path. And then the other thing that inspired me is what I've learned today, John, is just it's always a key thing to look at in everything, and that's simple supply and demand, right? And most things, it helps you evaluate opportunities if we start with supply and demand. So I looked, and there was really not a lot of people that wanted to get into leadership back then. It was kind of viewed to be a slave position. And I went to this field training workshop up in Albany, New York. I'll never forget it. And it was a good workshop. And the guys that led it, not to be named, were highly incompetent. And yet they were making $300,000 to $500,000 a year way back then.
Back then, yeah, which is a million five now, probably.
Yeah, exactly. And so my friend Lee and I went through this program, and it was okay. But I remember going to a bar afterwards and Lee saying to me, you know, these guys are kind of bozos. They're really not very good. I'm not sure leadership is for me. I said, Lee, I said, you're looking at it just the wrong way. I said, think about supply and demand. If these are the best of the best that are coming to the table to teach us, what could our opportunity look like? There's always a huge demand for leadership because we know that it matters. And yet the supply of really talented ones who are committed, who are students of the craft, were very limited. So I said, Lee, this is our time. We do this now, and we are even half good as these guys, or twice as good as these guys. Think about what could happen. So I became a coach. I became a district manager, and my MO was always taking over a distressed group and taking it from last to first. I did that at every organization that I was. My district began with 4 people, grew it to tops in the nation with 28 people, got promoted to run Rhode Island. That was last, brought that to first, then became a region guy back then, a group VP when they redid the world, and my boss convinced us to come down to Atlanta, which is where we are now. We've been for 28 years. And I enjoyed all that. And then at some point they said, you know what, we want you to have more scope. And so I became a senior VP. My last 10 of my 25 years with Ameriprise. And I kind of wore 3 hats. Hat 1 was my distribution role, where I had 8,000 advisors through what I had built to be just a dream team of 12 fantastically talented, great humans, my group VP team, and I have so much respect for them. And people like you had on your broadcast, like Scott DiGiamarino and John Poole and people like that. And then second, I had so much passion for leadership development. They put me in charge of that for the field leadership. And because I had so much passion also for building referral-based businesses, because if you're in it to help people have a great life, not just have a great business, you've got to be a master at the referral game. And so I had learned from Hancock the 1,000 cold calls a week thing, and that's no fun. So the way I built my organizations was trying to instill the proper systems and training and leadership so that people could build referral-based businesses. So the company put me in charge of marketing for the field as well. So I had a lot of hats, and that was a fantastic 25-year ride. I learned a lot. I kind of built all my organizations in the image of what I wanted, which was the formula of having amazing talent, top talent, times great systems, times a whole lot of grit to get through the adversity when you had some ups and downs. And truly built them as little entrepreneurial organizations within an organization. And I always viewed Ameriprise to be more like my private equity funding source that allowed me to build organizations that could impact a lot of people in a super attractive way. So that was all kind of career one. And then I retired from that world, as you know, 10 years ago, really just to pursue my entrepreneurial habits and muscles more in depth. And I've been doing that for 10 years. And that has been a magical ride, honestly. I thought that first part was amazing, and that was a great ride. But last 10 years have been spectacular. It's just been so much fun. I've been involved, the vision was always to build multiple reoccurring income businesses that I had equity stakes in, and to play a role in those being successful, and then hopefully participate in some liquidation events. And that's exactly what's happened. I've been involved in probably 20 ventures, experienced a handful of liquidation events as an investor, money raiser, CEO, owner operator. And so, but it got to the point 5 years ago where I needed to apply my principle that I've learned of Pareto's law and narrow it down to a few things. And so one of the companies I founded that I'm most excited about, as you mentioned, is a company called ReferMe IQ, because my observation was all these financial advisors and insurance agents and small businesses and salespeople want to build referral-based businesses. They know the power of referrals. Consumers want to be referred that way, but there was no real technology to help them bypass human nature, which is all the things we know we should do, ask, get somebody to recommend, all those things. So long story short, we automated a really cool technology that helps people put a foundational systems in place, and called ReferMe IQ, which is an automated referral platform that does all the key behaviors that we all wish we had done, and we spent millions training people how to do. Mm-hmm. So I spend most of my time there. I'm involved in doing some M&A consulting, and I'm involved also with Scott DiGiamarino, who's a guest of yours, mm-hmm. Helping him grow a great company called MovieComp. So that's kind of been the big rocks of the journey. A lot of fun along the way, a lot of twists and turns, a lot of great advice, a lot of great leaders, but couldn't be happier here to share whatever I can about that.
Wow, what a background. I want to talk a lot about in a minute about ReferMe IQ, the things that you have going on over this last few years in particular, because it's been really exciting. But I want to go back for a second, because one of the things I find interesting, two things that you said early on. One is your motivator to get into leadership originally was one, you wanted to impact more people. And secondly, you did the opposite of what most people do. Most people tend to just go where the masses go, right? So if everybody else is doing something, they're going to do it. But you looked at it totally different. You said, hey, there is definitely a need here. And this is, this is an opportunity because there is a need and the supply is not there of great leaders. So that was your motivator, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you learn things through life, and the best leaders amongst us, excuse me, are the best students. And so continuously adapting, learning, growing. But excuse me, it's allergy time here in Atlanta. For those of you that are down here, you know that. But for me, John, I've always found value in being the contrarian. And fortunate for me, I married a wonderful woman, Janine, that we've been together now 30 plus years, actually 35 years together.
Wow.
We'll have a 30th anniversary in May. But we have many shared values, but one of them is that, and that is that when most people are zigging, we tend to zag, and so being opportunistic means you're able to find spaces and look for opportunities in places that others don't. Why? Because they're just not there. So it's the open spaces, the blue oceans, as they've called it, where the puck is going from a Gretzky perspective. That's where all the juice is. That's where all the fun is. And so, yeah. So when I pursued leadership, it was totally out of vogue. Everybody wanted to go big producer route. I had a clear path to doing that. I was doing very well, but I saw that people needed to be led. The organization was in growth mode, and I saw that nobody wanted to do it. And the difficulty of task was enormously high because there were so many barriers to entry and lack of systems and support to support it. And so that eventually changed when people came into the picture, like great people like Larry Post, who brought with them systems and a way of doing it. He brought the playbooks at the time that we all had a need for them. But when I did it, right from the start, like you said, it was very contrarian. And I find in life that one of the values that I share with entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs think this way. It's everybody else is going left. Your first inclination as a human is herd mindset to go left. But the entrepreneurs, our first instinct is to at least look right and see what's there and look for evidence that might be a preferred path with a higher return, and then assess the risk of what that is.
Well, and you've always lived your life that way, doing things different than other people, going different paths. And I'm smiling because I'm thinking about, as you're talking about Janine, how you guys met. You want to tell that story? I love that. How you actually how you actually broke the ice.
Now you're going to embarrass me, John. Yeah, so I met my wife, Janine, at a nightclub, actually. It was called Club Soda in Brookline, Mass. And I was working for John Hancock, and it was IRA season. And I was there with the guys from Hancock and another friend, and place was empty. We were at one side of the bar with my friend Ron and Perry, and Janine was on the other side. She had just, she went to Regis College and just got accepted into the France abroad study program, French and business. And so they were up in the upper tier and we were down here, and they were enjoying a celebration up there. And I looked at Janine, and she was in a red dress. And I said to my friends, I said, I am going to go meet that girl, and I'm going to marry that girl. And it was kind of an empty dance floor. And so without thinking, it's one of those lifetimes when, you have to just do it, because you can't just talk about it, you've got to do it. So almost without thinking, John, I literally sprinted across the dance floor. I'm surprised I didn't trip, because there was a couple places where there were steps. But of course, once I got up there, I hadn't planned on what I was going to say. I literally had nothing to say. So I went up to her, and the first thing that came to mind, because it was during IRA season, is I said to her, I said, excuse me, I said, have you fully funded your IRA this year? And it was the worst line. It only had to work once. But to my surprise, and this is Janine because she's so smart, she said, actually, I just did. My dad got me set up, and I just put money into an IRA. I said, look, Janine, I said, you're the only person in this bar that even knows what an IRA is. You have to dance with me. And so we danced, and then I did some other things. I told my friends to ditch me there, so she had to give me a ride home. And last piece to this, interestingly, our first date was at Chi-Chi's restaurant in Cambridge. And both Chi-Chi's restaurant and the club that we met both burned to the ground within a pretty short time of each other. And so we asked ourselves, what does that mean? And we didn't know, does that mean that our relationship is going to go up in flames, or are we going to have a fiery relationship? And that's what it ended up being. So that's the story about Janine.
Well, you know what? I look at it, both those places served its purpose. They connected two fantastic people, so their job was done. They didn't need to exist anymore.
Yeah, that might be true too. And thanks for saying that.
Wow, what a story. I love that. I forgot some of those details there, but that says a lot about you. You think about, so many people have these, opportunities in life, and they don't they don't step out of their comfort zone. You've always been a guy that's done that, and I think you're just, your way of thinking is different. Your way, you take actions that are different. Um, and obviously that's proven to give you the life that you have, which is a phenomenal life personally and professionally. Where does that thinking come from? Like where do you know, can you trace that back to how you kind of formulated the way you think and act and all that?
It's a great observation, John, and a great question and we need to ask that question, right? We need to find out people's why and understand the big why behind people so we can help them get what they want for themselves. Yeah, I actually have. I've spent a fair amount of time looking back in order to understand why I do what I do. In order to say of that, what are the gifts I want to leverage more, and then how do I want to make sure I'm playing to my strengths and things that I do. But one of the things that I do and is what you said. I like to, when faced with something uncomfortable, I have this instinct to go head on into it. And I wondered, why is that? And there's a few events that did happen. I've shared this a few times with people, but not a lot. One of them happened when I was 9 months old. And I think I may have told the story in a speech that you may have heard at some point. But when I was 9 months old, I grew up in the Midwest. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. And I was there till birth until 6. And that was super formative because there was about being a good neighbor. It was about relationships. It was about Midwest values. It was about integrity. It's about doing the right thing, taking care of your neighbor. And that had a big impression. But what had the biggest impression was when I was 9 months old in December of 1960. My family, my dad and my mom's family, they grew up in New York. And every year we would fly to New York for Christmas. And this year was no different. And during December of 1960, everybody was lined up to fly to New York for the holiday. And the very last second, my dad made the decision to drive, but he didn't tell anybody on the other side. And so we drove, and we were literally minutes from getting in the car and hopping on the plane. Well, the plane that we were to be on had a mid-air collision with another plane, and 100% of the passengers died on both planes. And so that story became more real to me as I got older because I didn't quite understand it when I was young. But so much of who I am, I know, is based upon, with the knowledge of that, I have a second chance. I have a gift of life that other people don't quite see because they haven't experienced that, though so many have experienced life-changing things. Now, I didn't really feel it a lot back then, but when I look back upon that, one decision by one man means whether I'm here or not. So I've always had this urgency to say, all right, what am I going to do with this gift? It's like a gift. Do I allow it to stay under the Christmas tree and not open it? Or do I do something with it? And so I've chosen to say, let me find that answer. Let me spend my life finding that answer. What could I do to impact people? And the best I can tell, what came out of all that was this philosophy of that, how do I create and reinforce the best version of myself by staying healthy, keeping my mind sharp, learning, building skills? How can I be my best version of me for one reason, and that is so I can be the best resource for others to make a difference. And when you think that way, stuff begins to come to you because I'm asking the question to the universe, and all sorts of people, situations, experiences came to me that were clues. Learn this, pick up that, apply that. And along the way, the only thing I'd add to that, I'm super fortunate to grow up in an Italian family with two great parents who were very different, but both great role models. So my mom, who's still alive, she's from the southeast part of Italy, a town called Bari. And they're spicy, aggressive, and speak their mind. And she is brilliant at relationships, patterns of behavior, making stuff happen. My dad is from the West Coast. He's more the conservative, business mind, brilliant man. he went from being the sweeping the floors in New York of a company called Vanity Fair to moving up in the organization. 45 years with the same company, became the CEO of the company, and got the job because my grandma made him wear a suit to the interview. So I had my dad over here doing this, having this amazing career, going from sweeping floors to CEO. My mom showing how to treat people and how to make things happen. And so I was very much an observer growing up. And of course, you have the pressure on yourself to say, what are you going to do? You got these two great parents, you have this gift of life. What are you going to do in life that in the end you're going to matter? And that you're going to be able to, people are going to look back and say, this person touched my career, my life. So John, I've really spent my life doing that, whether it's in business, with my kids, with my family. I do a lot of mentoring, but I get a real kick out of just trying to help somebody not just get what they want in their business so they can get quantum leap growth, but also do it in their life. I really enjoy doing that.
Wow. Well, first of all, that's a fascinating story. I mean, I'm just blown away by that. And that's, um, did you ever ask your dad why did he decide to drive at the last minute, by the way? Was there a reason, or was it just a hunch or something?
Yeah, I did many times, and it was two things. One, it was a practical thing. My dad was a very practical guy. That year, we had too many presents to bring on the plane, but he also said it was just a gut thing. It was like just a gut feeling. And boy, if there's any great lesson in that for all of us, right? It's that so often our gut, our intuition, which are not the same things, tell us to do something. And when they do, we need to listen. Can you imagine if my dad didn't listen? And so, one of my dad's great accomplishments is he wrote a book. I have it here, actually. It's called 45 Years in Ladies' Panties. I know you've read it.
Great book.
But he's been in the intimate apparel business. But in the book are a lot of, and you can get it on Amazon, shameless plug. But this, in there, it documents a lot of how he made decisions. And it's a kind of a fun thing for me to go back and look at, because a lot of who he was and the way he made choices, I've got those CDs in my head that sometimes I'm aware of. And so much of my life has been to take those CDs of principles, of frameworks, of systems that I know can help guide people to a best life, and make sure that I share and I teach those things and equip others so that they can do the same. Because I think that's why we're here.
Yeah. Well, it really makes you realize you are here for a purpose. I mean, that's what I take out of that. Your life story is there is a very real meaning to you being here. And you've really done throughout your whole life a great job of expanding your influence. I mean, you've impacted me tremendously. But think about all those people. It's not just you and your family, but all those people that have been positively impacted by you, that traces back to that one decision. I'm just fascinated by that your dad made.
Yeah, it is.
One of the things you gave me a great piece of advice, and it wasn't that long ago. One of the best pieces of advice, and you've given me tons. And you said sometimes you spend your life trying to just make things happen, and you just have such a mission around something that's very focused, and it forces you sometimes to try and break down barriers and put sometimes square pegs in round holes. You said something that really hit me, and it was, you have to pay attention to the signs, and you have to look at them, and you have to understand them. Talk a little bit about that and what that means to you, because that's definitely made an impact to me.
Yeah, every decade, I guess, I learn more about that, and it's been fascinating, John, because there's phases of our careers, right? When we're young, we're in kind of this warrior, slay dragons thing, and sometimes we get arrogant when we do it, and then we hit another point. We hit some version of our own private road to hell and back. We learn, we come out of it. We go through these cycles in life, and but I was always a planner. I was always somebody who set goals, achieve goals, set goals, and achieve goals. had the plan. So I always kind of lived in three dimensions, which was the past, what I'm doing now, and the future. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that the only place to live is in the present. You can certainly learn from the past, and you can certainly, set goals and put things out there into the universe, and that does increase the chance of things happening. But it's really all the juice is in the now. It's because life is one big optimization exercise, and that only takes place right now. And so when you put so much time into the now, everything slows down. Because when your mind is spinning for the future and you're trying to recount the past, time moves very, very fast. And yet when you're in the now, time moves at a snail's pace, because every smile, every thing you pick up from people, and you're able to see signs of things happening. So there's two parts to this. One is just this discovery that over time, there's a book called The Power of Now, which is fantastic. But there's all sorts of, I do meditation twice a day. There's a lot of things I consciously do now that help me stay in the now. And it's so liberating and empowering, because you always have control over what you think and what you do now. And all the rest is just uncertainty, and the certainty of uncertainty. So part one is this. It's a habit that over time I think you learn, which is put the time into the now. And when you do, to your point, you start to see things that you just didn't see before. You're like, did I really, see that street sign was turned the wrong way? I was going for a walk with Janine up at our lake house the other day, and we both looked, and the street sign was like twisted, and our block was facing the wrong way. It's Janine, we've been here 20 years. I bet that didn't change for all that time, but now we're seeing it. Why is that? And so using that as a metaphor, there's all sorts of street signs that are off and on that we miss because our minds are just elsewhere in this, ADD society that we're in right now, and all the noise and all the conflict. So getting present, staying present allows us to see some of those things and to ask our guts, should I do this? And the gut will either give you a sense of peace, or it'll give you some turmoil, and that'll be a sign for maybe some other questions to ask. So that's kind of part one. Part two is advice from, and this may be the best advice I've ever gotten, John. And this came from, and I'll give credit to Daryl Grigg, who's a psychologist out of Canada, that he and I did some joint emotional competence training together at Ameriprise. And I stayed in touch with him when I retired from Ameriprise, and he gave me advice that I gave to you. I actually paid it forward to you, in that he said, look, Velardi, he goes, you're at a stage in your career doing this entrepreneurial thing, because I didn't want to retire. I tried that for 6 months, and you can only fish and play so much golf, and I got bored quick. And I said, what's next for me? He said, look, don't be planful. Don't set goals. Don't put things out there. He said, here's all I want you to do. The only thing you've got to do is row the boat. I said, what's that mean? He goes, picture yourself on a river, and it's got a current, and you're in a boat with an oar. And he said, the only thing you do is row the boat and steer away from the boulders and the shore and the trees. Let the river take care of you. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you're going to keep coming to these forks, and one fork is going to have a stronger current that's going to pull you to, the promised land, to where you should go, to the ocean. The other one's going to stop someplace and be a slightly less current. Because all you have to do now is row, and just be aware when you come to that fork, sit back in the boat, let the current take you to the right place. And I got to tell you, that advice was life-changing, because over the last 10 to 12 years, I've been involved in so many super cool projects with amazing humans and teams, with great opportunities, financially, emotionally, friendship-wise, that I can guarantee you I would not have allowed myself to be exposed to, because it wasn't part of the plan. And so there's times in your life when, and it just comes down to me, John, to the whole concept of yin and yang. It's so important to recognize that everything meaningful in life is a conflict. Life and death, hot and cold. And the line we want to live on is the line in the middle, the curve in the middle. And we want tension always between both of them, right brain, left brain. And that we want to acknowledge that it's okay to experience the full range of emotions within all of that. But we want to ask ourselves, when we don't have much conflict or tension in our life, not good. If we have too much peace. And so finding the right amount, and as you said earlier, for example, we don't grow unless there's conflict. We don't grow unless there's tension. We don't grow unless there's adversity. So we need the right amount of that, but we also need the right amount of peace to recharge to be able to take on those challenges. So that kind of rowboat thing helps me ask myself constantly, and how I lead others. Am I finding that balance? Am I helping others find that balance? So that's kind of the story behind that.
Such great advice, and that really it speaks to me, and I think it speaks to a lot of people, because I think people focus so much, and people end up not doing things that they should do, or deep down inside want to do, because they don't see the road clearly ahead and know exactly what's going to happen. Um, and and that's the difference between some people that achieve great success and happiness and some people that don't, and then live with regrets. I was watching a podcast earlier with Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and he was talking
Mm.
about his whole venture when he started Amazon. He had a cushy normal W-2 job, and he told his boss, "Hey, I'm going to do this thing in this online bookstore." And his boss said, "Well, it's kind of cool, but you got a great job right now. Why would you do that?" And he said he took a couple of days and actually thought about it. But he said the reason he did take the leap was, he said, "I don't want to be 80 years old looking back having regrets." And the people regret the things that they don't do. They
Mm.
rarely regret the things that they do. Because he said, "Listen, even if I did do it and it was a failure, I wouldn't have regretted it. I would have actually been proud. Hey, listen, I did this." But your philosophy, that's such a great way to help somebody get a little more comfortable with the uncomfort of not knowing, what's going to happen. And sometimes you got to take that leap, you know.
Yeah, and it's not easy, and we're not perfect, and there's we all have fears, and we all have um, our own stories that we have to constantly edit because we create these narratives that aren't true. So it's a journey, and but more often than not, where I try to land is, if it's uncomfortable, maybe I should do it, not the opposite. It's like, I view everything to be like working out. I know you work out, and you can't grow a muscle or tone a muscle unless you create adversity and you tear the muscle. So once you start having that mindset, you start to move towards discomfort and away from comfort, not towards comfort, which is what we're kind of preconditioned to do because we want to protect ourselves, we want to protect others, we want to be safe. And so human nature is fascinating, but once you understand it, you can trick your mind into a new set of beliefs that are actually more aligned with the universe than what you thought.
You've kind of changed your norm. Most people's norm is go in the path of least resistance. Your norm now is really going in the path of resistance and discomfort. That's become now your way of living life, really. And that's helped you grow. See?
Yeah, the crossroads or the crosshairs of discomfort with opportunity with talented people is usually where the juice is. If you see a unique space that's an opportunity that also has a high difficulty of task but not impossible,
Mhm.
and you believe you can build a vision around that and get the right people, the talented people, good humans behind that with you to do it, there's usually something there that makes it worth kind of jumping into the fire and walking over hot coals. And that's in the greatest businesses I've been involved in over the last 10 years, that's kind of been what the environment's been. Great people who are loyal, who are willing to walk through the fire and the hot coals, combined with a great opportunity, with something that's hard enough that most people probably aren't going to do it. And therefore, if you can do it, because of supply and demand, that you'll come out ahead and achieve things and be able to bring others up with you.
I want to talk about your leadership, and I want to talk a little bit about. I mean, you've done such an exceptional job in your career of turning around organizations, and not just small ones. I mean, they were major turnarounds from last to top, and you did it multiple times, and you did each one quickly as well. What goes into that? I know that's a big question. It's tough to answer because it's a lot of things. But what are the 2 or 3 things that come to mind if somebody said, "Hey, how do you do that?" I mean, that's such a level 10 plus difficulty. How did you turn around organizations? What kind of leadership goes into that?
Yeah, it's a great question, John, and it's a fun one too. And so, kind of the big rocks for me when somebody takes over an organization, if I advise people or if I reflect on what I've done, kind of, for me, it's always 3 things. So the 3 things for me, per Pareto's law, is one is you have to put disproportionate pressure on change. So you can't just do things slowly. You have to shock the system. You got to go through the old, turn up the heat, throw in the frog so he jumps out, because if you do it slowly, the frog's going to die thing. And so for me, that was always right out of the gate. It was always creating a vision first. So I'll use an example. When I took over the Rhode Island division, everybody was dressed in brown polyester leisure suits. There was dust all over the computers. Everybody was just walking around depressed. Everything was all the reasons why they couldn't succeed. I mean, it was really the opposite of what I had experienced just coming off a spectacular growth story with the Boston division as a district manager under Larry Post and with people like Scott DiGiamarino and people. So I just come off of that and seen this contrast. And so the very first thing that I had to do was to get engagement of everybody to say, right now you're playing the game of your baseline to some goals that you set. And I want to help you reframe that to some new goalposts. And that is the goalposts of what would it look like to be in a world where all of you are hitting your goals, but the goalposts we're playing between is your goals and your potential. And so part one is to impact people's mindset of it doesn't have to be this way. And what would it look like if all of you were making X, looked this way, had great families, had balance in your life? You get people saying to yourself, is that possible? And you start to paint this vision of a great life because we have a great business, and you start to talk to the future branding of what this could look like. And then that's kind of step one. And people start poking up their heads and saying, wow, I'm kind of interested in that. And I really don't love this whole here. And then part two, the second thing is to let them participate in the design of that. So I think I've taught you guys the whiteboard exercise. And I basically would name that vision and call it, high achievement, great place to work, something. And you put that on the board and you write down all the things that it looks like, the money people making, how they're dressed, what they're saying, what the office looks like, what their cars they're driving. You make that super clear. And then on this side, you say, all right, let's establish today's reality. And it's hysterical. People will say, we dress terrible, our suits look like shit, or this or that, whatever it is, they'll write that down. And then you look at it together and say, okay, first of all, which side of the board do you want to land on? They say this side, this side. It's okay. Well, we can't do all of this. Let's prioritize some things. So in Rhode Island, for example, we prioritized a very small handful of changes. The number one thing they said they wanted to change was how they dressed. So I got a clothing consultant in there from Tom James, and he and she went in there, and it was instant. That was on a Friday. Monday, folks came in the office and it looked like a different office. I mean, a different office. We trashed the old office. We leased a new office. So we did a set of things that got us going towards that. So it's about strong vision, let people participate in the design and the prioritization, and you can lead them down a path and they'll get it. They'll know the right thing to do. And then the third thing is starting point. You got to establish this super aggressive 90-day starting point. And so what I learned is a year is way too long to do anything. You got to break the game into 4 sprints at least. So we implemented business planning right out of the gate and said, look, I don't care what happens in 91 days. Only thing I care about is the first 90. We're going to put a plan into place. We're going to get the right people in the right seats, and we're going to run like hell for 90 days. And then we're going to take a step back and say, What do we do? What do we learn? We're going to set another plan. It may look a little bit like it, a lot like it. I don't care. But we're just going to take things in 90-day sprints. And that worked extremely well. So those are, a few things, but you got to get to the hearts and minds of people. You got to get the emotional why behind it. And you can't just mandate, especially in today's world. Modern leadership today is about engagement, being authentic. It's about capturing people's minds, souls, and hearts, not just their heads. And when you can do that, people will amaze you how they start playing the game of the goalpost between their goals and potential as opposed to just their baseline and goals.
So how much of it is, I mean, people want to win. They want to be part, they want to win themselves. They want to be part of a winning team. How much of it comes down to people not knowing what to do versus some people knowing what they should do, but just not being willing to do it? How much of it is each, do you think?
I think it's all the above. I have a principle called the 1/3 principle, that most things fall into a third. I think a third of the people just don't know how to do it. And if you show them how to do it, they will do it. There's a third of the people that know how to do it, but don't know how to execute and do it. And then there's a third that probably don't have a clue to either. And you have to find a way to decide what to do with that third, whether they're part of the future of the organization or not, whether they're coachable for those things. But, it's always been said, I'm not sure who said this, and I've said it, but I don't think it came from me, that good leaders tell people and can show people what to do. Great leaders also add the why to it, in terms of, why are we doing this? You get that pull towards that oak tree across the river. And superb leaders add the how. So it's what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And then how do we do that? And if we equip people with those three things, we dramatically raise the odds of execution happening, as long as we build the structure and the habits and the automation that address human behavior, knowing that we can't always get ourselves to do things that we want to do. So you're absolutely right, John, that those things are important.
I like the way you break that down. That's a really good way and easy way. So, a good leader does what, it shares what, great explains the why, and a superb explains not just the what, the why, but the how. So, and you did that extremely well. What was your largest, what kind of situation or scenario was the most difficult for you, do you think, as a leader? Was there something that you found particularly challenging, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I'd say there's two very, very different ones. One was the evolution of Ameriprise due to no fault of anybody's. I loved my ride. I was there 25 years. But if you believe what I said about that, what I loved about it was that I can build these entrepreneurial organizations within this great ecosystem of support, capital, talent, people to learn from. That was a great ride. The last 3 years or so, like most organizations in the industry, as margins got thin and commoditized products came to market, it became much less entrepreneurial. And so the last 2 or 3 years there, it felt much more like a corporate job. I had to get an office in Minneapolis. And again, that's on me. It's not on the company. I appreciate everything the company did. I chose to be in that role. I chose to accept positions when offered to me. But the last couple, 3 years were difficult because it just didn't feel, I didn't feel as empowered, as much in control, that I could find ways to add value. And the organization was evolving and changing to the point that I was beginning to see the writing on the wall that I needed to do something different. And that kind of led to my 3-year plan of saying, before I turn 50, I'm going to retire from that world and do what I love to do. No fault to anybody, and so value and appreciate the support from Ameriprise and the leaders within it. But it just became less and less of a good values fit for who I was and where I wanted to go. And in that time period, I had to do things that I just didn't love doing and want to do. And that's part of every job, right? We all have to do that. But when the yin and the yang get out of balance, when you're doing too much of one and not enough of the other. That told me, and I was feeling stress. I was getting sick more often. I was less present at home, which is totally unlike me because I take pride in that. But I was beginning to see these little cracks. And it was very, very hard because I didn't want to leave because of some of the things I really loved and the people I loved. At the same time, for me to be the best version of myself and go on to do, making more of a difference, I knew I had to. So that choice to retire and to move on to this life was a very hard decision to leave something that that was that great for so long with so many great people. So that's one. And the way I reconciled that was kind of this whole raft in the river and blank slate. And as much as it was a little scary to do that, it was unbelievably exciting because I could recreate myself, and because I had the financial means to have options to do what I wanted, it allowed me just to relax and just kind of say, what's next? And let me be open to it, and things just evolve. So that was one. The second, I think that is and was the hardest is that when you're used to an environment that's so highly resourced, and then you move to environments and startups where there's such a lack of resources and everything is bootstrapped, and you are in a world of scarcity, to try to build the formula of how do I take that and stage the growth in a way that we have the right resources at the right time, that is very hard to do. And ReferMe IQ, for example, started off as being just a glimmer in the eye that spawned from my business, where I said, gosh, you know what? Building a referral-based business is a super important thing to do. Everybody knows the power of it. 400% conversion of leads versus others. Consumers want to be referred. 83% of consumers would refer. It's the way to build a business. It's the most honorable thing. And when I get out of Ameriprise, it's like, well, who's doing it? And everybody wants to do it, but there was no technology to automate it. So that led to me building a company. And that was a spinoff from another failed venture that I was part of that I co-ran. And I spun that off saying, okay, let me take this and let me create something that solves that problem of automating the key steps of, one, people have to ask for referrals. Most people don't. Second, you've got to give people reasons to refer. Most people give them their reasons, not the customer reasons. Third, you've got to somehow find a way, John, as you know, to get the referral to position you the right way and recommend you. And most people don't do that very well. And then you got to somehow get the referral interested prior to making the contact. Otherwise, it just feels like a cold call and you'll stop doing it because of the rejection. And then the ideal scenario is that you find a way to create a path that you change the game because you're in touch with people, you're adding value to them and making it easy for them to refer. You create a path so that referrals are actually beating down your door saying, hey, I was referred by John. He said, you're a great guy and you've got a great offering for blah, blah, blah. Will you contact me? And could we create a technology that gets people contacting the financial advisor, the insurance agent, the small business owner? And so that was what I went out to solve. And I found some great technologists, built a team, but that team has been with me the whole ride. And we've built from there. But that is a really hard thing to do. It's hard to take what I was consulting doing and actually doing it yourself, to actually put together the people, the capital, the plan, et cetera. That has been a ton of fun, but an enormous challenge. And now the business is at a place where we're asking different questions. It's all about how do we take what we've done bootstrapped and how do we take this and just explode it, because that's what's happening. We have such great talent in our team to help us do that.
Well, and that's I know how well ReferMe IQ is doing and how many companies are now using it, and people are using it because you solve a great problem, and it's a big problem. That's everybody knows they want to build their business through referrals. They know the value of that, but they're either uncomfortable taking the steps to do it, or they just don't know how to do it or how to really build the system to do it. And you've solved for that. So that's a really valuable and also unique approach. What do you see for the company moving forward? What's next?
Yeah, what's next? And it's very timely right now. Where the feedback we get are we're way up in our business this year, and it's in part because what people are telling us, and that is, what the better time than now to have a really good communication system in place for all your layers of relationships, where you're adding value to them, you're in touch with them, you are asking for referrals, especially since the entire world of face-to-face interaction is dead right now. So it used to be we would see somebody in their homes, as you know, or them in our offices, and you have this connection, this trust, and you can find more confidence to ask for referrals. Well, that gone. How do you do it on video conference? You know, who knows how to do that? So it's a very timely platform right now in the marketplace to have a solid communication platform where you can also ask for referrals and make it easy. What we're doing right now is we are in aggressive product roadmap stage. So we have a great team of people, but what we're looking to do now is to take the next degree of scale. We work with larger enterprises, and we work with very large distribution channels that have a lot of people that want to use our software. So we're kind of going down a dual path of building strategic partnerships with really good humans that want to use ReferMe IQ as part of their solution set for their people, whether you're a sales enablement organization, whether you're an IMO or FMO, or whether you're a group, an RIA group that is building a membership base in order to deliver some value, like a marketing value prop. So we're seeing tons of traction with really good people doing that, and really great value props like what you have with Chris Bonacore, First Advisor Network. These guys are building out is a perfect strategic fit for us because we have a solution that's part of their solution that adds to their value. So there's a marketing piece of that that's going very well that we're going to really build out. Product wise, we're always trying to answer the question, how can we make our product more effective in referrals asking for a meeting? And so we're expanding into more integrated solutions. We're adding text functionality to our platform. For example, we have one, there's a referral link that comes with our system that you can add to text. We have one of our clients got over 200 referrals just by this referral link. She pops it on, she owns a hair salon, and she tells all the people, hey, you know, if you like what we do and you refer people, you'll get, you know, hairdo for free or your nails for free. I just need your phone number. I'm going to send you a link. Just put some names in there. And they go to the thing, and on their text, they text to the phone, form comes up, they put names in there, and they get a bunch of referrals. And so we want to build that out more and have more ways for people to interact and engage with our platform, so we can start to create even more avenues to equip people who want to refer people to make it even easier as it is. So product distribution, strategic partnerships, and we've been kind of bootstrapping this. And so I'm always interested in saying, is this the time to raise some money, which will be like jet fuel to do it? We haven't had to. We're doing well, but I think we're starting to get to the point where I think I want to invite a select group of people to be part of this. Very much like I'm part of the journey with Scott DiGiamarino. I am to the point now where I want to invite a small circle to be part of our growth story also. So some of those things are happening right now. So that's
Awesome.
kind of the story, and I'm sticking to it.
So, and it's a model that every business, really, any business that's trying to generate clients or revenue, obviously that's every business can use. Any business that wants to get business through referrals or word of mouth. So, love it.
True, and not only that, it's also for businesses that want to nurture existing relationships, whether it's clients or their network, because half the game is being referable, right? So to be referable is all about contact for sure. The more contact you have, it's about adding value, and it's also about doing performing the values that come with doing all that. So the use cases have been really interesting, John. We have some people that use our platform only to communicate with existing clients and upsell them. So we have one company that does probably $300,000-400,000 a year revenue just from our product, solely on videos of new products that they get out to people with the ask, if you want to learn more about this, Others use it exclusively for referrals. Others use it as a content delivery platform. But the primary objective, we have this thing built as an assassin system to fish in the relationship pond for people who say, you know what, I just can't get myself to do all of these things. It gets lost. So is there a foundational system that I can just automate this so I know all of my relationships are being asked referrals? I know that they're creating the conditions to make it easy for people to refer. We're making it easier for them to send thank you notes to people and fulfill incentives and to introduce people. It all happens behind the scenes so that all somebody has to do is put their email, name, and address into the system, and our system just takes care of all the rest.
Great stuff. If somebody wants more information on ReferMe IQ, where should they go?
Yep, they can go to refermeiq.com, refermeiq.com, and go to the homepage and play around. There's lots of free stuff, John, in the Resource Center. That's a great education. And if anybody wants to learn more, I strongly suggest you go and click on the live demo and spend 20 minutes with one of our staff. We'll learn about you and your business and leave you with at least one or two growth ideas you didn't have, show you how it works, and put you in the best position to decide if this could be a good fit for you.
Awesome. Well, I could talk to you forever, man. I got so many more questions. Let me ask you one more question that I think will be valuable for people. We're in such a unique, challenging time. Obviously, this is a stress test for everybody in every way possible. What advice would you give to people? I mean, what's something they should or can be doing now that can help them get through this mentally, emotionally, and maybe in other ways too?
Yeah, it's such an important question, not just a good one, John. I think of this as being a test, like any other test that comes along in life, for either you and I specifically, or for a group of people. And it is a test, and it does test what we control, which is what we think about, and what we do about what we think about, which is the only two things that we control. And so, during this is a scary time. It's a scary time for everybody. There's nobody immune to, and it's not that people are afraid of getting sick, because we all know that we've been sick and we come out of it and we're just fine. But when you have one of the biggest fears in life, which is the fear of death of yourself or a loved one, be so prevalent in the media, it becomes really scary. So what do you do about that? How do you think about things the right way? So I think about a couple things. One is the old kind of Ken Chenault, CEO of American Express mantra, that it's the role of a leader to show hope and optimism, but balanced with reality. So a big part of this is to find that yin and yang of saying, okay, this is real. People are dying. There is risk. But also to find evidence, as much evidence of hope and optimism where you can, because it's all over the place. It's all over the place. Every night in this condo apartment development, there's hundreds of them around here, 8 o'clock at night, as they're doing, I think, across the US. Everybody comes out and cheers for all the first responders and doctors and nurses. I mean, that would never happen if this didn't happen. It's an unbelievably emotional thing that connects people in ways that would not have connected, by way of an example. And I think, so it's kind of the reality, it's hope and optimism. And in the middle, to me, I remember Chris Bonacore mentioned this on his interview with you, and I believe this too. It's all about perspective. It's so important as humans, but certainly anybody that leads or influences other people, to have perspective on this and look at history as a guide. Look at this against other diseases and wars, and look at what we've done in the world and as Americans to get through times like this. And so if you have perspective, if you stay reality-based, you look for hope and optimism, it just kind of calms everything down. And then the last thing is that always during tests like this, there's opportunities. And I'll tie this back to what we talked about before. You got to get yourself calmed down enough to be present to see them. But when you take that edge off of, I'm probably not going to die today, probably not going to die tomorrow, and you kind of say that we're okay, right now, if you can live in the present, you start to see signs of opportunities to help out, to do good, to give back, to grow something, to double down on something. Whether it's buying stocks now when things are down or making investments in your business. There's always opportunities. And like with ReferMe IQ and MovieCom, for example, we're in the sweet spot because MovieCom is a great way to enhance and spice up communications. ReferMe IQ is a great automated platform to be in touch and in front of your relationships. So it's like, what can we do to matter more during a time like this? How do we change our marketing? How do we change our messaging? So that's the way I think about it. I just think about it. You have to have a framework in your mind. If you just go along with everybody zigging and just get caught up in the emotion of all the horribleness, that's one set of outcomes. If you zag and say, well, pause time, what's the reality? Where's there evidence of hope and optimism? What's the bigger perspective on this? And then what can I do? What can I do right now to improve the situation for myself, family, and others? People that do that are staying pretty centered and enjoying more time with family. I think puzzle skills have gone up a whole lot.
Prices have gone up a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been games resurrected and created that I just haven't seen before in my life. So there's a lot of good that's come out of this too.
Well, always great talking to you. I'll tell you, you've been a great friend, a great mentor, advisor to me. And I know I'm going to be playing this back because there's so many great nuggets of advice. And I know everybody's going to find it valuable. So thank you for joining us. I hope you come back sometime.
Hey, I'd love to. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the great questions. You're doing a fine service to people with your podcast because you're getting perspective out with multiple angles of attack because of everybody having their stories behind some of these frameworks. And I'm sure you're seeing emerging themes that look more like principles across the board that people can take and actually apply their own lives. So you're doing a great job with this, John, and it's nice to be here.
Thank you. All right, everybody. We're here with Peter Velardi, CEO of ReferMe IQ. For more information, go to www.refermeiq.com. Great company, great leader, master of life, Peter Velardi. And we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you subscribe, add some comments, share these podcasts as well as others. And we appreciate you joining. Thanks. Have a good one, everyone.